So I'm giving you a vision test. Hopefully everybody can see that okay. I'm going to get you to read as far down as you can. Looks really good on my screen. No, Sherry had asked about a flyer we had mentioned, excuse me, the 3-day apologetics seminar that Buford is holding, and it is January 5th, 6th, and 7th. And somebody had asked, there's no cost to attend. There's no registration. You don't have to sign up. It's just they're going to have it whether you show up or not. So if you just want to show on up, that'd be great. But I know some of you have heard Kyle Budd speak before. Probably some of you have seen on some of the videos that they offer with Apologetic Express. Great speaker and very knowledgeable. And so some of the topics, the case for creation, problems of the dinosaurs, theistic evolution, and then there's also a question and answer session on Saturday, and then tools for equipping Christians to defend the faith, and then fruits of atheism, and then also protecting our children's faith. And so different opportunities to be able to learn to defend your faith against the devil, and against those that are fighting against the belief in God, and also those that are trying to mix beliefs, evolution and Christianity. And sometimes they mix. Sometimes, in the case of theistic evolution, it does not mix. But there is that opportunity, and if I can get a flyer, I'll try to get a flyer from them to be able to send something, or put something up in case you are interested in going. But we have time. It's next year, or just a few weeks away. Okay, so we're going to two-step tonight. It's Walking with God, part 2. And so as we look at just a quick review of what we talked about this morning, to be able to answer the questions, how do we make sure that we're walking with God? We started off with the discussion of Enoch, and what a guy he would have been to hang around with, because he was hanging around with God. He walked with God. That was the description given, and his life was such that God rewarded him with just taking him, again, not having to go through death as everybody else normally does, except for, again, we talked about Elijah and even with Jesus being taken. But what a relationship he must have had with God. And so, talking about that relationship, of course, we mentioned Paul and his discussion to the church in Corinth, and the fact that he was looking at, we talked about mixing light and dark, and you can't do that. And us trying to mix a worldly life and also trying to walk with God, it's not going to work. And so Paul encouraging the Corinthians to make sure that they were in agreement with God, walking with God. And of course, we have a problem with that because, well, we're man. God's ways and our ways don't always agree. We have to decide which way we're going to go. And God gave us the instructions on which way is better. My thoughts are not your thoughts, or your ways my ways. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways. My thoughts than your thoughts. And we look at this, and he is not just we're different. He's spiritual, we're physical. It's my ways are better. My thoughts are better. And there's a big difference. It's like looking at tax reform. Republicans are over here. Democrats are over here. I'm not really stretched out far enough to really show you the big difference there. All right. God is way beyond even that. The difference between us and God, and how much better He is. And so why wouldn't we want to go His way? And of course, Jeremiah reminds us that we know we can't direct our own steps. We can't make our own path, do things our way, and still be pleasing Him, and still make it to heaven. That doesn't keep us from trying. Man, over the generations, has tried over and over again to develop a new and improved way, or coming up with a way to this is what we need to do to be pleasing to God. And, that way may seem right to man, but its end is death. If we're not walking with God, we're not there with Him, we're going to go the wrong way. And so we talked about the first and second lie that we see in the book of Genesis. The first lie, of course, being the devil convincing Eve to eat the fruit, and then, of course, she gave it to Adam and he ate. And the second lie was, of course, Cain's believing that he could worship God in the way that he felt was okay, which went against whatever God's instructions were that He had given him. And so, it just, to me, it's scary to think about the temptation that the devil threw at Cain. It's, the devil wasn't tempting him to disregard God, don't believe in God, be an atheist. In the beginning, it just happened. And so he knew who God was. He actually had a conversation with God. And so the devil was fine with him believing in God, fine with him worshiping God. Just don't do it in the right way. Do it, do it in your own way. And so we looked at the difference in the ways of Cain and Abel. And to me, the biggest difference was the fact that Satan was involved in the worship of God. Satan had tempted Cain to worship God in his own way, and Cain accepted this false doctrine that the devil was selling. And where Abel was offering God what he chose, how he chose to be worshipped, Cain did not. There was some type of approval. Cain saw that Abel was approved by God, and he saw that he was not. And then, of course, we looked at Matthew chapter 15. We had those scribes and Pharisees, those who were fussing at Jesus because they weren't washing their hands. Again, they were focused on God. They worshiped God. They believed in God. And yet, they had turned something into worship that was not. They had made a rule of God that God had made up. And so, they were teaching others, maybe the young folks growing up, as we see Jesus went to the temple to learn, and of course ended up teaching the teachers. But they probably taught that Cain was wrong. He worshiped God in the wrong way, and God let him know. And yet they were doing exactly the same thing that Cain was doing. They were worshiping God, but they were doing it in the wrong way. And so, of course, Jesus called them out for that. Explaining that they were worshiping in vain. And so we see as man, we use Cain as an example here of man worshiping God. And we talked about, of course, the fact that he murdered his brother, and that was really bad. But John goes on to say, yes, he murdered him, but you know why he murdered him? It's because his works were evil. And we looked at what he did. He was worshiping God. But he was worshiping God in an evil way. It was in his own way, not God's way. And when we start mixing in the ways that we want to, and man comes up with his own ways, then all kinds of different types of worship are offered to God in the name of religion. And so, of course, we call it a slippery slope. Once you start calling anything you want to worship, who are we to say it's not? If that's in your own mind, this is worship, anything goes. And so, of course, we've seen through man's history how bad that can get when it comes to worship. So, earlier today, it was a commercial for coming to hear God's solution to man's pollution to worshiping Him. Thank you for coming back tonight to hear the answer. We talked about the hint this morning. It's this walk with God, being like Enoch. In the beginning, we had, in the book of Exodus and the book of Leviticus, we have God's instructions to walk and work in His way. And if they would stay in His way, if they would walk with Him, He would be their God. He would protect them. And, of course, we know that they did not. We look at, with us, do we want to walk with God? Well, maybe we want to walk with God, maybe we should ask. We ended this morning's service and we're pleading to God for just a closer walk with Him. And He calling out, this this is our plea. Asking for us to be able to walk with him. Well, he's given us instructions on how we do that. If we look in the book of Jeremiah 6, verse number 16, thus says the Lord, stand in the ways and see, and ask for the old paths where the good way is, and walk in. Then you will find rest for your souls. But they said, we will not walk in it. So it is encouraging, look for the old paths. Got a couple of action words here for us to look at. You may have, stand in the way and look. Or, it says stand in the way and see. This, we need to be looking for the old paths. And then asking for the old paths. God, which way do you want me to go? He is encouraging us to go his way. And then we need to go on it. It's see and ask. But then there's that other part that says walk in it. Just knowing the old paths, knowing what to do is not enough. We must make sure that we are actually walking with God. And we are doing what he wants us to do. Of course, we know this way, the old paths, the way of the Lord, can't be found in the doctrines and commandments of men. We looked at what Jesus had gone through with the scribes and Pharisees, and Jesus was talking about his message and where he was coming from. Jesus didn't make this up on his own. He didn't just wake up every day and say, all right, well, what am I going to talk about today? What can I get them with today? What can I make them do? And make up this religion so that he could mess around with people's minds. He said, I do nothing of myself, but as my Father taught me, I speak these things. When it came to explaining the pathway of God, he went straight to the source. He went to God. Well, of course, he, the great example is and pattern for me. If Jesus went to God for information on how to live, why would we do anything different? We have instructions given to us, written by God, that will lead us to the pathway, which will lead us into heaven. We looked at Matthew chapter 15 this morning, those that were teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. These traditions that they had come up with, that they were trying to spin into now this is a religious fact. We talk about washing hands. You must wash hands. This is a religious ceremony now. You must wash hands before you eat that peanut butter and jelly sandwich to be pleasing to God. Jesus called them out. These were blind leaders of the blind. Of course, he said, we know where they're going to end up, right? They're going to end up in the ditch. But worse than stumbling and falling, he says they're in danger of being uprooted by God. John talked about it, John the Baptist talked about it with the same group of people. He told them that the axe was laid to the root. They were fixing to be cut out. And of course, what happened to the stump after it was cut out? It would be burned. Jesus, again, bringing it to their attention. You're in danger of being moved away from God's chosen people. It's not a particular nationality now. The nationality is the kingdom of heaven, not one that you'll find on Google Maps anywhere. And Jesus said if they didn't change to follow after God's will, they'd be in danger of being lost. And of course, Paul talked about this idea of being in God's way, walking with God, and just knowing him, knowing who he was, being familiar with him, loving God. That just wasn't enough. Being zealous for God is enough. Romans chapter 10, verse 1, Brethren, my heart's desire and prayer to God for Israel is that they may be saved. For I bear them witness that they have a zeal for God, but not according to knowledge. For they, being ignorant of God's righteousness and seeking to establish their own righteousness, have not submitted to the righteousness of God. For Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone who believes. Paul loved the nation of Israel. He was an Israelite. He was a Jew. We don't read about his family obeying the gospel. And we do read about the fact that he grew up a Jew of Jews. He got all the proper training so that he knew the law of Moses. He knew what to do to be a good Jew. And then he turned his back on all of that to obey the gospel and become a Christian. This zeal for God that the Jews had could have also been for his family. He was recognizing the fact that they knew who God was. But just knowing and loving him was not enough. And as we think about, again, we have today, first day of the week, how many millions have met across the United States? Of course, even around the world, but thinking on just as Paul did here, in the United States, how many people met today zealous for God? Going in and worshiping and worshiping him hard. I mean, just really putting themselves into worship. They could feel it. And just knowing that what they were doing was right. Being zealous, but not according to knowledge. So I'm proud to be an American, or at least I know I'm free. I won't sing the rest of that. But we have been blessed to be placed, because I didn't choose what country I was born into. I missed that part of orientation. We're blessed to be born into this country, especially looking at the work of the Truth of the World, and I mean, somewhere like Kenya, and that place is a powder keg that's actually blown up a couple of times and waiting to blow up again. I mean, people are dying because of elections over there. We have some crazy elections, and even after the elections, but we don't have these problems that many people in the world have. I love this country. Just riding along and wondering how many people are lost. Watching TV and just see a football game on. A stadium full of thousands and thousands of people. And just thinking, how many in that stadium are lost? I understand Paul's love for a nation. And that's why we spend money on sending out something like House to House, Heart to Heart. Because we can even narrow it down instead of just loving America. We'll love the folks here in Franklin County. And we're spreading seed. We're sending out information, trying to make it available to them, hoping that someone will be able to read what comes into their mailbox and at least question, so that hopefully we can answer. Hopefully moving beyond just being zealous for God and moving into his way. So how do we make sure that we have more than just zeal? How do we make sure that when we worship, we're worshiping the Spirit and the truth? How do we make sure that when we're living as a Christian, making decisions, saying the things that we're saying in our actions, if all, they're in spirit and the truth? I know everybody's out of school right now, but there's a test involved. John said when it comes to making sure that everything is okay, we need to make sure that we're testing. what we're hearing. Being a Berean, searching the Scriptures. Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits, whether they are of God. Because many false prophets have gone out into the world. By this you know the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is of God. And every spirit that does not confess that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is not of God. And this is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you have heard was coming, and is now already in the world. You are of God, little children, and have overcome them, because he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. They are of the world, therefore they speak as of the world, and the world hears them. We are of God. He who knows God hears us. He who is not of God does not hear us. By this we know the spirit of truth and the spirit of error. We need to know the spirit of truth, the spirit of error. It's not just, does it feel right when you hear it? It's testing. Thankfully, it's an open book test. We need to test Bob when he is teaching on Sunday mornings and going through the books of the New Testament and explaining, this is what Paul is talking about in the book of Colossians. This is what John is talking about in his letters. We don't need to take his word for it. There's an entire book that's there with the facts, and we need to check them out. The same with Steve. The same with me. The same with the teachers in these rooms. The same with conversations we have with people. We need to test what they're saying. And we have the ultimate test right here. God's given it to us. Paul told the church in Ephesus that we shouldn't be tossed to and fro, carried about with every wind of doctrine by the trickery of men. We'll see congregations, even in the Lord's church, that are tossed to and fro, depending on who's standing in the pulpit. Because they're going to just follow whichever way the preacher begins to preach. The church in Reagan County is looking for a preacher. Now, McKinley Tate's leaving, going into Alabama. And he was talking about a preacher search that he was a part of years ago. And some of the folks that he talked to, he's had a couple of times where the answer to a question was, well, how do you want me to preach that? Because I could go either way. That was enough for him. The interview was over. It's sad when even the preacher or teacher is tossed about with every wind of doctrine. When we have the facts written for us in here. That's how we make sure we don't just have zeal, we can also have the knowledge. So, we talk about walking with God. Enoch walked with God and had that relationship with him. No, we can't have the same relationship that Enoch had as far as having a conversation and hearing the words of God in our ear. Him having a face-to-face conversation with us as he did back in the patriarchal age. But we can talk to God in prayer. We can let him talk to us through the Scriptures. So when we look at this idea of walking with God, this walking, what does it mean to be walking, to do something? It's your lifestyle, it's your decisions. And we look at 2 Kings chapter 8, verse 27, talking about King Ahaziah. He walked in the way of the house of Ahab, which was not a good thing. Did evil in the sight of the Lord, like the house of Ahab, for he was the son-in-law of the house of Ahab. So this description, this is the way he walked. It wasn't that he had a limp, or that he walked in a hurry, or this is not actually his physical gait. These are the decisions that he made, and we're going to kind of lump them into he was bad. Paul talked about it again with the church in Ephesus, Ephesians 2. Verse number 1, and you he made alive who were dead in trespasses and sins, in which you once walked, according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit who now works in the sons of disobedience. You were walking incorrectly. You were walking in the world. You were walking according to how the devil wanted you to walk. If we're walking in the way that the devil wanted us to walk, if we walk all the way into judgment day with that, we're not going to be walking into heaven. The good thing is, he says, you once walked. They had left that walk. We see the same thing in Colossians 3 and verse 5. Therefore, put to death your members which are on the earth, fornication, uncleanness, passion, evil desire, covetousness, which is idolatry. Because of these things, the wrath of God is coming upon the sons of disobedience, in which you yourself once walked when you lived in them. The church in Colossae used to be, those members, those Christians, used to walk in the ways of the world. Thankfully, just because we're walking in one particular way, when we talk about walking in the way of the world, walking away from God, he allows us an opportunity to walk with him the first time, or walk with him again. But then I have in parentheses, it's while we have time. So that's walking, about walking with God. Genesis 5, verse 24, Noah walked faithfully with God. We see what that means in the next chapter, chapter 6, verse 22. With all these instructions on building this ark, Noah did according to all that God commanded him. So we did. That's how he walked with God. He gave him instructions. There were things beyond building a boat. He was out also preaching, trying to encourage people to get on the boat. Come and, float in the way of God. Unfortunately, it didn't work. Micah chapter 6 and verse 6, with what shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before the high God? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, 10,000 rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has shown you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God? This idea of walking with God, again, it's been God's message since the beginning. He wanted to be able to walk with Adam and Eve there in the garden. He wasn't able to continue that conversation with them there in the garden. He wanted to be able to walk with those in the world when Noah was alive, and was not able to do that because of sin. But he continued to walk with Noah. Walking with God is also walking in the Spirit. Galatians 5, verse 16, I say then, walk in the Spirit, and you shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. For the flesh lusts against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh, and these are contrary to one another, so that you do not do the things that you wish. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. Which Paul then goes on to explain, these are the works of the flesh. And then this is the fruit of the Spirit. This is what happens if you're walking in the Spirit. This is what's going to happen. All these good things that God wants us to do and wants us to be if we walk in the Spirit. Romans 8, the first 4 verses. Those that are walking according to the Spirit, there's no condemnation. That's what we're looking for. The day of judgment rolls around. Those that are walking in the Spirit, those that are walking with God, those are the ones that are walking into the kingdom of heaven. How do we know? How do we know how to walk with God? How do we know how to walk with the Spirit? 2 Peter chapter 1, Peter describes these scriptures. Again, this is not anything that man just sat around and decided we're going to make this up. I'm just gonna write the story. It's not like somebody's gonna write a best-selling novel. I'm gonna write some things down and sell lots of scrolls. These are the words of God. Knowing this first, that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation, for prophecy never came by the will of man, but holy men of God spoke as they were moved by the Holy Spirit. When it comes to the instructions found in this book, they came before. This is the Word of God. We see that again, 2 Timothy 3:16. All is given by the inspiration of God. This particular time of year, we start working on our lists and making some resolutions as January 1 rolls around. And so when we have this, some maybe health-related items, maybe financial-related items, maybe spiritual. January the 1st, 2018, this is going to be the year. I am going to walk with the Lord. I'm really, this is the year. I'm going to make it happen. Which is a tremendous resolution, to being resolved to walk with God. Of course, what would make it even better is if instead of January 1, 2018, you made your list of resolutions that started on December the 17th, 2017. Why not today? Why not tonight? Decide to walk with God. We know the ultimate benefit of that. It's heaven. For all eternity. We know the opposite of what's going to happen if we don't. It's going to be hell for all eternity. We have an opportunity to make a decision which way to walk. Walking with God or walking with the devil. Walking with the Lord or walking with the world. Jesus described it as two different ways. And we're going to go one way or the other. There's no third path. There's no, I'm just going to stand here and wait and see what happens. Enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leads to destruction. And there are many who go in by it, because narrow is the gate, and difficult is the way which leads to life, and there are few who find it. Hopefully, you have made your choice tonight to follow the path that God has laid out for us, to walk with God. Following the other path is the easy way. We don't have to do it. All we have to do is do nothing, and we can be lost. Jesus described making the decision to walk along with God. It can be hard. We see over and over again through the Scriptures the men of God and what they went through. Sometimes, just like our Savior, it cost their lives by walking with God. But the focus has always been what's to come. This is just this life. For all of us, at some point, it's going to be over. It's that life to come that's going to go on and on, where this walk and this life is going to be laid out in judgment. And if we walked with God, what a tremendous joy it's going to be to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of the Lord. If you are ready to start that journey on the path that God has laid out for us by obeying the gospel, the decision is tremendous. The biggest decision that you will make in your life. Learning who Jesus is, believing in Him as the Son of God, changing our life to match up to His way, and then confessing our faith in Him as the Son of God, to be baptized, to have our sins washed away, and then living faithfully, remaining on that path that He has laid out for us, staying in that walk that He has laid out for us. Maybe you've done that, and that walk has led you down another path. The world called, Satan called, and you answered and headed down the wrong path. All along the way, there is an exit off of that path that's going to lead to destruction. What a great night to take that exit and get back on the pathway that God has for us. Ask God to forgive you for that sin. Confessing that sin to Him, He is ready and willing to forgive you of that sin and welcome you back to be able to walk with you once again. And if we can help in any way, let's as we stand and sing.